Okay, looks good. Heading down the hill.
Well, here we are in Ferrari's first all-wheel drive car. A four-seater that looks a bit like a wagon. What's going on here? Let's drive the Ferrari FF. Check this out. Now, ergonomically, what is an FF? It's a car with four seats, the back two of which you'll notice are actually pretty credible. Two doors, of course. Ferrari swears up and down they will never, ever, ever make a four-door. They're looking at Porsche when they say that. A V12, of course, because this is a very premium car for Ferrari, and a GT, meant for long-legged athletic touring, not so much track use. And of course, the thing you either love or hate about it is this shooting brake design, as they call it. Kind of a hatchback meets a wagon with a camback cut-off rear lid. It gives you fairly good cargo space in the back. And flying over all of this is an optional panoramic glass roof, perhaps the biggest I've ever seen. I could actually sleep on that. It doesn't have any movement, not tilt, not slide, nothing. But it does let in a ton of light and supposedly only modest heat because of a special high-tech film. Now, the inside of the FF is a beautiful cabin, very kind of low-slung and sporting. It matches what you'd expect the inside of a Ferrari would be like. The first thing that draws my attention, though, is an unfortunate thing. This ancient Chrysler parts bin head unit. I think the last time I saw one of these, it was literally in a town and country about 4 or 5 years ago. It's not a non-functional unit. I mean, it gets the basics done, but it does not befit the quality of this car. The map display is crunchy. It's also very small. On the good side, though, its touchscreen is exceptionally responsive. Things move quickly. And its voice command is actually very quick as well. It doesn't lead to any connected services. There's no app support. You've got real basic sort of built-in media here and a crunchy-looking map. Now let's get on to some things that this car has that are unique. First of all, over there on the passenger side, that's optional for thousands of dollars. I wouldn't spend the money, but it gives your passenger a look at your RPMs, trip odometers, mile per hour, gear position, and all kinds of stuff that I guess keeps them from being bored. It's one of the oddest displays I've seen in a production car. I would say something otherwise for what's in front of the driver. This is a great driver's office. In the center, a great big mechanical tack. On the sides, all video-based gauges, either a digital or analog speedo on the right. And on the left, you've got various settings, but primarily you're going to look at your VDA, your vehicle dynamics setup, which will change depending which drive mode you're in. Speaking of those drive modes, that brings us to the Manatino, the little handle here on the steering wheel, going all the way from snow to wet. Comfort is your standard mode, then there's sport, or hold it over on the stability off position, and it warns you, it's all your problem now. Start buttons are common these days. On the wheel, not so much so. That's very Formula One stuff. This shock button doesn't change through all of your different suspension modes. The Manatino does that, but this does put you in what they call bumpy road mode. It actually does soften things up. You would look at these and think they're shift paddles. In fact, the paddles are these nice big magnesium guys behind here on the column. These are your turn signals. It's a Ferrari thing, left and right. It's actually very intuitive. Not so much so the horn. You can press here all day and all you're going to get is an angry airbag. The horn's up here on these little delicate buttons under the leather. And behind the wings of the wheel, to go with that Chrysler head unit, are the classic Chrysler fingertip buttons, the ones you operate by feel and not sight. They change track, adjust volume, things of that nature. Over here on the lower consoles, more your drive control. R for reverse. Auto is putting you in automatic mode. The car doesn't necessarily default to it as much as most cars do. And PS is some Italian for launch control. We've got a rear view camera in this car standard. Thank you. This little button here changes it from normal mode to weird mode. I'm not quite sure what the value is. And we have a front camera on this car as well, but that's optional. Now let's talk about these back seats here in the second row. It's a big part of this car's claim to fame. Are they the real deal? Well, first of all, these are full-size seats. They aren't little dinky little 911 seats or something. The only downside is, of course, the car's got a certain limited wheelbase, and if I sit behind my own adjusted driver's seat, as you can see, I gotta, spread my knees apart to let this thing sit there. It's a little cramped. The headroom is great, though, and like I said, the seat's full width and quite comfortable. Oh, you may have noticed this also. Behind each of our headrests, we have optional integrated iPad minis. They're quasi-integrated. They're sitting in nice leather holders on a strap on the headrest. And they connect to power so they don't run out of juice. Beyond that, they're on their own connection. They don't talk to the front head unit or do anything more electronically magical than just this. Now up here is a big part of the reason you buy an FF, because it's got one of these beautiful Ferrari V12s. I could just look at this thing all day and not even care how it runs, but it does run. The numbers: 651 horsepower, 504 foot-pounds of torque. All that accomplished without any turbos or superchargers. It is a direct-injected V12 with an extraordinary piece of balance and engineering art to it. You're going to hear it later and love it. Now, it's a front mid-engine, they call it, because basically the entire engine rests behind the front axle line. It helps to put the weight where you want it and not hung out here where it makes the car nose heavy and want to plow through corners. Now, the power coming out of this guy you'd normally expect goes to a transmission right about there. Instead, the transmission's way out in the stern. When you put it back there, it's called a transaxle. And it's a 7-speed dual-clutch automated manual, as you might expect. But because this guy's all-wheel drive, which is one of its headlines, there's another little mini transmission up here on the front of the engine called a power takeoff unit. It's basically a little 2-speed gearbox that runs just the front wheels from time to time. We'll talk more about that when we get on the road. You're going to get this 4,100-pound car up to 60 in a very quick 3.7 seconds. So far, nothing here under the hood is disappointing. Except for one thing, the MPG. If you care in a car like this, it's 1116. Figure you'll get 10 or 11 average. The first thing you notice on the road is that incredible exhaust sound. Even before you pick up on the performance, it sounds like it's going to go fast. And then it does. In comfort mode, it's the most athletic thing you've ever driven. In sport mode, it's even more so. What might surprise you if you drive this car is not this massive kick of low-end torque the minute you tip in on the throttle, but the power comes on smoothly and evenly for so long, because that lofty red line is not a false promise. Dual-clutch transmissions are not always the most refined. This one absolutely is. When you want it to behave like an automatic, you hit the auto button, put it in comfort mode, and this is a very refined boulevard cruiser. And then, of course, when you get into sport mode, drop it into manual shift mode, bang, bang, bang. It's like a Ginsu knife cutting between the gears. It's sharp and it's quick, and it just takes a flash. Now, a note about the all-wheel drive in this car. It's kind of an all-wheel drive light, or a helper all-wheel drive. At most, it can send 20% of torque to the front wheels. That's it. It is often letting the rear end do all the pushing, and it just sits out until it's needed for traction or cornering and torque vectoring. It only works in the first 4 gears of the main transmission and using its own 2 gears.
And I never stop being surprised at how well this car takes a set and dives into a corner without a lot of weight being thrown around or effort on my part. Other cars may accomplish that by doing some inside wheel braking or reducing torque to certain wheels, but this is just more alive and active. Impressive for a biggish car that has a biggish engine in front of the driver.
Okay, just for fun, let's price our FF. Not exactly in my price range, maybe it's in yours. That would be $298,000 or so, delivered with a hefty destination charge. Then you start to add the good stuff that truly makes it CNET style. Gotta love that panoramic roof. Hope you like it, $18,000 worth. Adaptive front lights are a trivial $2,000. That interesting passenger display is a little over $4,000. Carbon fiber steering wheel with those shift lights, almost $5,000. Add a front camera to the rear for $3,200, upgrade the audio to Quantum Logic for almost $6,000, and integrate those 2 iPad minis on the backs of the front seats for $5,300 the pair. And you thought Apple charged a lot for those things. All in, we're at nearly $350, and I haven't even begun to pick up all the different sort of exterior and interior customization options. The FF's not just unique for Ferrari, it's a unique car with its all-wheel drive, its sort of gentleman's express layout, its purebred V12, and its exquisite handling.